Hi everybody, welcome to Matrix Live, season 4, episode somewhere. I think we're in season 4. We're in season 4.
I've lost track, honestly.
We're good people.
Probably.
We haven't in any way lost track of where Matrix Live is at. And for old time's sake, we'll do one of us going and talking about life, the universe, and everything, and the sort of things which have been going on recently. We were meant to be doing demos of all sorts of interesting stuff which is coming up, which we just did for folks who are working at NEVAC on them. But Dave is on holiday for Thanksgiving, and so we didn't know how to hit record. A bit embarrassing.
We have a single point of failure in terms of DJing.
Yes.
So, no demo.
We did record it on the analog gap, but it was a bit crap,
Yeah.
and it's probably better for us to talk through it. So imagine, if you will, in your mind's eye, the amazing demos of which we are about to speak.
The first one wasn't a demo.
Oh.
The first one was the migration.
Oh, yeah. So I guess this happened actually at the end of last week, but we might as well talk about it in this week. The people hopefully have noticed that matrix.org as a home server no longer is awful in terms of performance. This is thanks to shifting over to real hardware, bare metal, kindly provided by Mythic Beasts in Cambridge over here, who have found 4 very, very fast boxes for us to run both the databases and now the actual Synapse Python processors for matrix.org upon. The good news is that this has sped up our I/O by a factor of about 20. The bad news is that we are promptly blocked on CPU.
So it's not perfect, it's a lot better, but we still have to shard Synapse.
Yep, precisely.
In order to get out of this.
So we're really at the point where the master Synapse process, even though it's doing very, very little, is still hammering away at about 80-90% CPU. We turned on open tracing in order to debug UICs or the undecryptable messages, and it promptly fell over again. So we are running still with little headroom on CPU. And yeah, as Amandine says, we are going to shard like you've never seen before, fragmenting the database and the master process into as many separate sections as we can. So big rooms will have their own Synapse master to work on. It's how Dendrite has worked all along, and we are ironically finally backporting that into Synapse.
The other option is to get everyone to run their own home server or go peer-to-peer, but we're a bit far away from that yet.
Well, we could get everybody to run their own home server, and honestly, I suspect that a lot of people gave up over the last month and hopefully did shift to their own home server, but for now at least, we're stuck with making matrix.org go better, but oh my god, I cannot wait to turn the thing off. It is such a pain in the ass.
It is. In terms of other exciting stuff coming up, we're going to turn on end-to-end encryption by default very soon now, and we have been working on timelines. Although, first step, cross-signing.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we're going to have cross-signing very soon.
Yeah.
And people have already seen that we've been shipping chunks of it. In fact, it's all there on Synapse already. It's started shipping behind labs on RiotWeb, and a couple of enthusiastic people have said, "Oh, look, it's there in labs. Let me turn that on." Oh, wait, it doesn't work. It is not finished yet. So stop. This cross-signing is not ready yet. If anybody remembers Grosh beer adverts from the late 90s. But it's getting tantalizingly close. It actually looks really sexy. Perhaps we can try to salvage the demo that Bruno did of this. But basically, you've got little pop-ups telling you that people are trying to verify you now. The verifications go into your DM history rather than just be horrible ephemeral things which you'll never find again. And it's all coming together really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will be really nice. And once this has landed, then we can go into proper end-to-end encryption by default. So in terms of timelines, we're talking roughly...
We're aiming for end of year, honestly.
Yeah.
And it might come together in that time frame. Worst case, end of January in time for FOSDEM. We really want to have it in time for FOSDEM because I've submitted a big talk to FOSDEM talking about how we got our E2E cross-signing and how we're turning it on by default. Turning it on by default might not be that far behind because we have Seshat, which is the encrypted search thing, now merged into develop on RiotWeb, and it almost works perfectly. There is a little tiny memory leak which chewed 170 gig of RAM in about an hour the other day. It was on swap. I do not have a computer with 170 gig of available physical RAM. But either way, it's looking otherwise incredibly sexy. You get encrypted, basically it takes your encrypted stuff, decrypts it client side, indexes it with Tantivy, the Rust full text search engine, and then it re-encrypts it. So you have encrypted indexes and encrypted event store on disk, which is very, very sexy.
Yeah, it's missing a bit of UI as well, so basically if you're not a dev you cannot use it, but I can't wait to
Well, I mean, it does magically work, but you can't tweak it at all, and having an indexer that doesn't tell you how much you've indexed and how fast it's going and whether it crashed and do you need to delete your indexes and start over and all that sort of thing is a right pain. So in theory it works, but we're not going to ship it without the UI.
It's embedded in Riot in desktop.
Yes, and yeah, at the moment you have to build it yourself, which
that's what I was talking about.
Is a thing of beauty in terms of melting your computer because of all of the beautiful Rust. However, yeah, it's not exactly hacker friendly, or it's not human friendly otherwise.
Yes.
What else do we need for E2E by default?
So basically cross-signing, search, and killing all the UICs that are still flying around.
Yeah, and the last week we've had more. So we've been taking the Series A funding that New Vector got and trying to hire more people to work on Matrix, which on one hand is working really well. We've got people starting in the near future. We can talk about that in a bit. However, a really comedy recurring theme is that whenever we onboard a new person, they tend to already be running a home server, yay, and the chances of end-to-end encryption working with them is about 1 in 2. So I've spent personally a lot of the last week trying to hunt our remaining UIC problems, and so far every single one has had a different root cause. Turns out there's a race if you have 2 tabs open at the same time. Turns out that there is a race when synchronizing device lists. If you enable conversation with somebody in a room when you've also spoken to them a long time ago and then there was a big gap. All sorts of really annoying edge cases, which apparently we still haven't nailed down. So
you're saying end-to-end encryption in a decentralized system is hard.
It is hard, but come on, it's been like 3 years now. We probably should have got it to work by now. So I've taken this on as my personal Captain Ahab quest to smite the white whale of undecryptable messages because it's just embarrassing. It would be hilarious if we get cross-signing working perfectly and Seshat working perfectly, and I think the other things are the file panel.
Yes, the notifications panel and file panel. Which
are pretty close, so probably not showstoppers, but if we turn it on by default and nobody can decrypt each other due to these bloody bugs, it's going to be really embarrassing. Yeah. So that's where things are at for E2E by default.
In terms of timelines, we are also working hard on RiotX and expecting proper MVP at the beginning of the year. So by this we mean that it will be an app that you can, that it's not going to be completely at feature parity with the rest of the Riot apps, but at least you can use as a standalone application. You can register, you can create rooms, you can talk, you can in end-to-end encrypted rooms, you can configure your rooms. All sorts of, all the basic stuff, basically.
Also cross-signing
and cross-signing, yes.
And that's probably the single biggest thing that is getting in the way. Let me see if my RiotX is synced. I tried logging into it on my real account earlier. Still churning on it, unfortunately. But the timings are basically the same for E2E because, first of all, we're shamelessly abusing FOSDEM as a compelling event to force everybody to try to get stuff together in time. But hopefully, end of year, worst case, end of January. Let's see how it goes. And it is feeling really sexy. We just saw
the registration demo, which was answer and login.
Were you expecting that?
Expecting what?
The registration demo. I hadn't realised how cool the registration stuff was going on.
Well, I was expecting the demo. I hadn't realised that it was actually... I think I hadn't gone through all the designs and digested them. So it looks really nice.
It's better than... I'd say it's probably better than RiotWeb. And RiotWeb's registration and login flows are pretty sophisticated these days with little pop-ups everywhere and inline warnings when you've got the wrong password complexity, all of that sort of thing. And all of that magic is now there as beautiful semi-material design themed RiotX stuff. I think Ben said it was like 10, 20,000 lines of code on the PR or something.
Yeah, he focused on it for 2 weeks without breathing.
It shows. It's like, great. It's very pretty.
So, yeah. And we'll be actually tweeting and blogging about the RiotX releases, which we haven't done. properly, which is
for the beta releases.
No, even the beta releases, we never tweet or anything about it, so we will do it.
Yeah, we definitely should. Is that your fault?
No,
yes.
Well, probably it's always my fault when it's not yours.
Oops. I do all the other ones, and they're French. So surely it lies in your purview.
Okay.
What else? FOSDEM, we've already mentioned it a bunch, but all the deadlines for the CFPs are coming up at the weekend, so if you're listening to this and you want to talk at FOSDEM, your time is running out. But we ended up submitting 3 talks. We will see which of them gets accepted. One of them is called Making and Breaking End-to-End Encryption in Matrix, which is meant to be celebrating us turning it on by default, so we better have turned it on by default by then. And is also celebrating actually when you try to spoof people's identity and attack them, what is our threat model, and let's actively break things and see if we can hack people's accounts on stage live. And it's going to end up with Amandine chasing me off stage, waving a rubber hose in a sophisticated cryptanalytic attack.
Probably. What other talks have we submitted?
We have also done...
on real-time communications. Which one did you submit in the end?
The real-time comms dev room is bridging. It's all about Bifrost. It's called Crossing the Bifrost, which I found funny. Hopefully they will too. And it's all about XMPP bridging, Slack, Discord, WhatsApp. We're going to show off to Liz WhatsApp bridge if you'll let us. And hopefully that might have legs, you don't know. And the other one...
Decentralized room...
Oh yeah, decentralized internet reality gaps is one, which is all about P2P. Because P2P is going to happen. We are actively working out how to shift the home servers to run client-side and operate in a world without DNS and where your MXIDs are public keys, and how that works with today's Matrix. But frankly, we don't want to be in a position where Matrix becomes the obsolete old SMTP or XMPP protocol, and we want to keep it evolving as aggressively as we can. And if that means making it work without servers, so you don't have to mess around running a Synapse in order to participate in Matrix and yet have full sovereignty over your communication, you should be able to. So we will be working on that and telling everybody about what we're doing there if they want to hear about it.
Yeah, and talking about evolving and making the most of new stuff coming up, I think that's a good segue towards MLS.
Yeah, I don't want to blow Hubert's thunder on this, so to speak, but many people...
We can just not talk about it and just let it
drift,
hang in the air.
Float. No, I think we can probably spoil it a little bit because only the Matrix True of Heart would ever be listening to this in the first place. MLS is message layer security. It's the IETF RFC for doing end-to-end encryption as pushed forward by a bunch of people, primarily at Facebook, Cisco, Wire, Google, and a couple of other big places like that. And the way in which it works is algorithmically to be fundamentally more efficient than OM and MEGOM is today. Technically, it's the difference between O n log n and O n squared complexity or something in terms of, or at least O n complexity, in terms of encrypting messages in rooms. It also combines, rather than having the 2-layer thing, which causes some of our problems, where you first of all have the OM layer and then the MEGOM layer on top for groups, it is just one fundamental thing for groups. So in theory, that's to go wrong. The problem is that it doesn't support decentralization. In fact, they deliberately designed it out to keep things simpler, and they assume there is one server that coordinates on a given conversation the membership of a room, and it's centralized as a result, but in exchange it works. Hubert has been on a mission, on a Black Ops thing, after he handed over all of his end-to-end cross-signing stuff to the Riot dev team to see whether it would be possible to decentralize MLS. And as of last night, or the night before actually, he revealed the first highly secret and only secret, honestly, because it's a work in progress draft of what decentralized MLS might look like. And it looks really, 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 really fun. He's even got a proof of concept written in Julia because we don't have enough programming languages these days. Having let the cat out of the bag like this, I'm sure people want to see it. So the race is on for him to finish tidying up the edge cases on it and releasing it to the world, and also showing it to the MLS messaging list to see what on earth they make of it. But even if they think we're crazy for spending all this time working out how to decentralize it, we can just go and use it ourselves, even if it doesn't make it in the RFC. Or perhaps we'll end up submitting it as an RFC. First bits of Matrix actually hitting the mainstream. The XMPP guys will no longer be able to point and laugh at us for not being RFCs. Let us see.
Good. What else did we have to talk about?
We had newbies.
Oh, we are going to have in like 3 weeks, 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks from now. It's not an unknown person. He's been around for a while.
This is very complicated. So Neil Alexander, who many will know from Seaglass, and also Yggdrasil, which obviously isn't a Matrix project, but has got quite a high profile as the overlay network, is coming and joining New Vector at least to work on back-end stuff, both old and new. So it'll be interesting to see what he gets up to potentially with Dendrite and peer-to-peer stuff as well as Synapse. We're still having a bit of an argument as to what the right balance is there between legacy and new. On the one hand, Synapse still has many, many fires which we would like to extinguish, but on the other hand, it would be really, really nice to get going on the next generation stuff more seriously. We also have other people coming up too, but we can announce them as they arrive. And one of them is known to the wider world. Finally, shall we talk about amazing iOS clients?
Yes. So there are two of them. One of them is Manu having fun and playing with Swift UI. It's called Messagerie. And the other one is called Neo by Kilian Kolch. I have no idea how to pronounce it. Hopefully it's close to the reality. And so Manu and Kilian had been working together on both of these, and it's looking good.
And so Kilian got there first, to be honest, with a Swift UI-based Matrix client. Unbeknownst to him, Manu, the lead developer on Riot iOS, has also been writing a basically RiotX iOS called Messagerie at the moment, which is also a Swift UI client. They look somewhat similar because Swift UI is this really, really sexy abstraction of UI that you get nowadays on iOS. But it was really fun to see Kilian suddenly appear with something that was more advanced in some ways than what Manu had. And so, yeah, they seem to have been collaborating together on that. And if you're on iOS and you haven't installed Neo from TestFlight to have a play with it, you should. I have. Have you?
I didn't know I could install it from TestFlight. So
it is on TestFlight. Go get it now. It's sexy.
Okay.
It might have crashed on my main account, but
I use my secondary account, which I can't use on Riot because we don't support multi-account yet.
Yes. So amounts of grief
I've been looking for other iOS Matrix clients to be able to have both my accounts, and so that's a good one. I will try.
Absolutely. And then finally, actually, there is a third iOS client in the form of Ditto Chat that Annie has continued to be hacking on. And it's been really interesting, actually. Ever after she was on Matrix Live, just saying, the community around the project seems to have picked up massively with all sorts of folks popping up to hack on it. She's done a complete redesign, I think, which is featured in this week's This Week in Matrix. And it's really exciting to see how rapidly the React Native code and design is evolving there. So it's so awesome to see much, much better clients than Riot iOS, no offense to Riot iOS, appearing both based out of Swift UI and React Native. We've also got Paddle on the, whatever it's called, Flutter side of things. So all of the cool new UI frameworks are represented, and let us see which one ends up being best.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice.
Right, we've been waffling way too long, and I should probably go home or something. But I need to go home.
Go home.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Cool. Hope the sound quality was okay. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you for flying Matrix.
Have a good weekend, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.